the NFL preseason. This is Gridiron Ratings Dynasty Fantasy Football Podcast. I am your host, Jeff DiMatteo, and with me, as always, my man, Dynasty Analyst for GridironRatings.com, Kyle Carroll. Kyle, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. Getting my home leagues ready to go. Super exciting. Starting to make plans for the big draft day.
Outstanding. Well, I know we have a draft coming up at the end of August. I'm looking forward to beating your ass again.
Yeah.
And
year one. It's a different league. But yeah, I do remember I started off very strong in that league. I think I started off like 5-2 or something, 4-2, and then just team fell apart. Man, it happens.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yep.
But we've got a few things to cover today. So we've got a few news and notes we're going to hit on. And then today we're going to do a mock draft as promised last week, right? We're going to pick from the 101. And over the next few weeks, we're going to do a few things where we draft from the 1, the 2, maybe the 6, the 8. We're going to pick different spots and we're going to bang out 5 to 6 rounds or whatever we can do time permitting to help you kind of start building that strategy of what some of your drafts might look like over the next several weeks. So without further ado, let's hit some of the news and notes real quick. These news and notes are going to be brought to you by the Gridiron Ratings Draft Guide. Get it today. The 2021 Draft Kit, or known as the Playbook, is available only on GridironRatings.com. 500 players, 281 pages of all of the fantasy football analysis a man can handle, or a woman can handle, actually. People. Anything that people can handle. I was going for a little I watched Moana last night, and I got a Maui stuck in my head. So first news item. Nick Chubb signs a 3-year, $36.6 million contract. Fantasy-wise, I don't think this really has any impact on anything. He's in Cleveland. He stays in Cleveland. We're happy he's going to be there. Basically, he still stays a pretty elite option for Dynasty and redraft. Carson Wentz did something to his foot. No one knows what it is. He's out indefinitely, right? Not a lot to talk about yet. We just know he's not taking snaps, and they went ahead and signed Brett Hundley. If Carson Wentz can't go week 1, 2, or 3, how concerned are you for the whole Colts offense?
I feel so. Jacob Eason is an interesting prospect, I guess, at quarterback. I do wonder if they try to bring somebody in, depending if he needs surgery or not. I actually feel better about this for the running backs because over the last few years, Carson Wentz just hasn't really targeted the running back. So a guy like Nyheim Hines, I feel a little bit better about because I was really concerned. I was in last year. Phillip Rivers did great. I knew he was going to drop, but when they got Carson Wentz, I was like, ooh, that's really not good for him. But it may turn around, and Jonathan Taylor may get a few more targets, and Nyheim Hines may get a few more targets as well. So it's not good for the team, but for the specific position of running back, I think it is a little helpful to them if he does play.
Got it. Well, we're going to keep our thumb on the pulse of that one because that's going to be a really interesting one to keep an eye on. Fun fact. If Carson Wentz doesn't play 75% of the snaps for the Colts, then the Eagles do not get the Colts' first-round draft pick. And that could be pivotal when it comes to a potential Deshaun Watson trade to the Eagles. Moving on, next one, Taysom Hill. Jameis Winston, splitting reps at practice. Seems like we're getting a lot of mixed reports. Some people saying Taysom Hill's taking the lead. Some people saying Jameis is taking the lead. Read some stuff from NOLA.com this morning. A couple of the writers that were at practice actually took down stats. Both guys seem to be completing a high percentage of passes, but nothing really downfield per se. If we've got either of these guys at quarterback, is it going to be basically what we saw with Drew Brees all over again?
Most likely. I think the biggest thing is what do you expect with Alvin Kamara, right? They signed Devonta Freeman yesterday. You have to wonder if they're trying to get him more involved in the passing game, used in the slot a little bit more. I think he actually had less than 1 yard, a stat I'm trying to remember. It was less than his average depth of target was under a yard last year. He was used almost all out of the backfield. And so you have to wonder if they're going to start putting him in the slot a little bit more to utilize him. Yeah, you might just see a little bit of the same. I still firmly believe that Taysom Hill is going to win this job because I think they just need playmakers on the field at this point, especially with the Michael Thomas injury.
Gotcha. Well, I think the big difference is going to be that Jameis has actually had starting reps. And he's, despite his 30 for 30 season, he's had some reasonable success at the NFL level. Devonta Freeman, do we really think that guy makes the roster? I'm kind of nah, I don't even know that he makes it. I think Ty Montgomery has a bigger impact than Devonta Freeman, which that's a guy that could end up in the slot to keep Kamara in the backfield and split the backfield between he and Lat Murray. But time will tell. Let's keep an eye on that. Preseason starts. We're talking in another week and some change here. We got the Hall of Fame game on the 5th. And then usually I think the weekend of the 13th there, we're going to see a whole bunch of games happening. So pretty exciting times. Jimmy G, Cam Newton, both still have a stranglehold on the starting QB jobs. Probably not a surprise. We expected both of these teams to develop their young quarterbacks, take some time with it, especially considering they have Super Bowl quarterbacks on their roster. Mm-hmm. Cam and Jimmy G have both been to the big dance. I think Cam actually has an MVP trophy. I didn't really expect either of those guys to get punted to the sideline too quickly. Lastly, and this one's probably the most concerning piece of news, Dak Prescott, minor shoulder injury.
Yeah, it was, I think I read that it was some type of like shoulder strain. If it's a grade 1 or grade 2, I think mostly it's just rest from what some of the Twitter analyst doctors have said. It had it been a grade 3, it may have required surgery. So the fact that they don't think he needs surgery, I'm sure by the end of August, he'll be full go. He might even get some preseason action.
Definitely something to keep an eye on, because when you deal with strains and soreness, usually, that kind of stuff can linger a little bit if he doesn't get plenty of rest. So hopefully it's not overworked and we don't see any residual effects, especially coming off of an ankle and now a shoulder. And we have high hopes for that receiver group. And if he's not 100%, that whole offense takes a really sizable hit. So.
I did see this morning that he was still participating in like the run game prior to practice. He was still doing handoffs. He was still doing things like that. So I think it has to be encouraging that he's at least on the field participating. He's just not throwing at the moment.
Right. Gotcha. Cool. Well, with that, that's all the news. So why don't we fire up the mock? I've already got it kind of prepped up here. We're going to go ahead and pick from the 101. Now, the way we're going to do this is we're each going to kind of pick a player, right? We're going to give our kind of argument on the player. And if we're, hung up between two different players, we'll have coin flips basically to decide, who gets their way. I think that'll be the best way to do it instead of having one guy drive. So I'm going to go ahead and click the button here, and you guys should see it on screen too. Boom. We are using the Fantasy Pros Mock Draft Simulator, available if you have their MVP plan. So be sure to check that out. So first pick in a dynasty draft. So, Christian McCaffrey, right? Like, that's the guy. It has to be the guy, right?
Yeah, I think that's still the guy. 25 years old this year. He'll be turning 26. The injury last year is something to monitor, but you at least know that he got a full year of rest after being almost overworked the last 2 seasons. He had like the highest on-field percentage of any running back we've seen in a while. He was on for 90% of the snaps or something crazy like that. You don't see that for running backs. So yeah, I still think Christian McCaffrey is the 101 if you're okay with that. Anything about Jonathan Taylor that you would consider, or Saquon Barkley?
I was actually going to go contrarian here, and it's not Saquon, it is Jonathan Taylor. And here's why. I look at McCaffrey, he's age 25. This is his kind of peak season, right? Running backs physically kind of have their peak fantasy, peak physical seasons right around age 25. If I'm doing a startup right now and I'm taking McCaffrey, I'm trying to get him for 3 years, right? So his age 25, 26, 27 seasons, while still in his prime, it's not as good as, his 24, 25, 26 years. Running backs tend to drop off too quickly for me. I'd rather almost get those 3 additional years out of Jonathan Taylor. I'm not overvaluing his younger age, but the fact that he has a very, very good skill set. He catches the ball well out of the backfield. We saw it last year. The guy runs really hard. He's obviously a next level athlete in terms of his speed, his agility, his vert, his size. He's a guy in a few years we're going to be talking about as this, the second coming of Adrian Peterson. And, only with hands. So for me, I'm almost like, maybe it's Jonathan Taylor, but I'm not opposed to taking McCaffrey. Really, this is kind of a coin flip. Both are ice cream. You like chocolate or vanilla kind of a situation. Both are delicious. I say we go McCaffrey if that's the direction you want to go.
Yeah, let's just for this, because I think McCaffrey's still going to be the 101 and almost, I would say, well over half of your startup drafts. He's going to be the first pick.
Yep, and the ECR agrees. Obviously, 93% of the experts agree. I tend to be I'm playing contrarian here because I personally like Taylor. I love the skill set, and I think that he has that elite level upside. But let's go ahead and pop in McCaffrey for right now. Boop. And we are drafting against the Fantasy Pros ECR, so this may not go exactly to ADP level script. Let's see. We had, all the usual suspects are off the board here. We'll let the draft wizard kind of do its thing here. We got 7 more picks. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, that from what I can see, that looks about right. In these startup dynasty drafts, you're going to see a lot of wide receivers go early because of what we talked about the age of running back and their drop off. So guys like Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, you're going to see all these guys almost always sneak into the first round. Even I think AJ Brown there went in the first round as well. So nothing surprising on this board for me.
Yeah, I mean, it went Barkley, Taylor, Cook, Kamara at the top. Hill was the first wide receiver off the board. We saw a few more of these guys. There's Nick Chubb, AJ Brown, Derrick Henry. Obviously, we're at the back end of the second. Two of the tight ends are off the board. But, we're staring down, kind of the list here. Najee Harris is still sitting there. And the experts tend to say, hey, he's the guy. We didn't take the younger running back last time.
Mm-hmm.
And generally speaking, I tend to be in the camp of acquire wide receivers, quarterbacks, tight ends, especially when you're drafting dynasty, because they have a longer career. They have more elite seasons than running backs do. Running backs tend to peak earliest and drop off soonest. So if I'm spending elite draft capital, I hate to get the smallest return on my investment, right? I can always keep drafting and trading up for running backs in the rookie drafts in the subsequent seasons. But the idea of getting Najee Harris right here at the end of the second round is really enticing. I really like Jamar Chase, really like Terry McLaurin. All three of these guys are fantastic. What say you?
Yeah. At the end of the day, running backs are on a year-to-year basis are going to win you your league. Now, the reason we talk about wide receivers is because it is a long-term investment. And so they just depreciate at a faster rate than some of these wide receivers have. But yeah, if this was my pick, knowing that we're going to have these back-to-back picks here on the turn, I definitely think I'd want Najee Harris on the off chance that McCaffrey starts to have that decline. At least we know we have a solidified running back that's going to see the majority of touches on his team.
Sure. Now, how would you feel? Let's just say we take Harris here, and we're back-to-back, right? So I'm with you on Harris. What if we went Patrick Mahomes here on the top of the third round? Lock in that quarterback for the next decade and a half.
Yeah, and that is definitely in a one quarterback redraft league. I'm definitely like late quarterback. Let's wait a little bit, sometime past the sixth round. But in a dynasty league, I'm okay taking your chances here. Your team is overall going to be a lot younger, and so you're going to want to swing for some of these upside players like Patrick Mahomes, who you have that pick and you don't have to worry about it. Another consideration here is two tight ends already went off the board, right? And I know we both love Darren Waller, but he's kind of at that point of like, look, he's 28 years old. He'll be 29 at the end of the year. When do you start talking about Kyle Pitts? How early do you start talking about age when you are trying to build your team up? And so you have to have a balance of age and still trying to win. And so I would not be against taking Patrick Mahomes here. I think it'd be a little early for me. I still like some other quarterbacks later on that I think have similar outlooks. Deshaun Watson would be one of them if I knew he was going to be playing this year. I definitely would try to wait another 2 rounds and get a guy like that personally.
Is there another quarterback that we can say for the next, say, 4 to 5 years that we can count on being basically a top 3 fantasy quarterback without needing to worry about them running every play? Like Lamar Jackson obviously runs a lot. Kyler Murray runs a lot. Josh Allen gets you a lot of rushing yards. Those guys need the run in order to be that top 5, top 6 quarterback. Mahomes doesn't really run a whole heck of a lot. Is there anybody else out there? I mean, you mentioned Deshaun Watson, but let's assume for a second he's kind of off the board at this point on the account of we don't know what his legal situation is going to play into next season. And we don't know where he's going to play. But, I mean, you got Dak Prescott, but, I mean, we already talked about him battling injuries. Do we trust the Cowboys to keep building the team around him? Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, so Dak was kind of the guy I was going to mention as someone who over the last couple of years, I have his statistics here. He's just been a very solid player on the ground just by touchdowns. He doesn't rush as much as people think he does. He's only surpassed 300 yards rushing twice. He was at 277 2 years ago. Last year, through 5 games, he was only at 93 rushing yards, but he gets the touchdowns. Started his career with 6 touchdowns on the ground per year, 3 last year in 5 games. And so that's kind of a guy where you look at Mahomes, he's always going to be pushing that 5,000-yard mark, probably always going to have close to 35-plus touchdowns. But I think Dak is one of those players that he puts up the yardage. They have the offense. They have the talent. And so if I could wait another round, even though he is kind of battling injury at the moment, I think he's going to overcome that and still be a long-term dynasty player. And that's a guy that could make it around the other side. But I get what you're saying, though, is you don't want when we speak about running quarterbacks, they need to have that floor of passing that I think Lamar is still good for another 2 to 3 years. But if he starts taking too many hits, or he's getting a little older, we see that these running quarterbacks, even Michael Vick later in his career, he just didn't run the same. A guy that I think of like Donovan McNabb, right? You look at the stats like early in his career, he put up some rushing numbers on the grounds occasionally, but when he started getting older, he had to rely on his arm a lot more. And so you look at Kyler Murray, who I think is a good passer, but if he doesn't have the rushing numbers 3-4 years from now, are you going to be happy with that? And I don't think so.
And that's kind of what I'm getting at. So when I look at all these younger quarterbacks, like even Justin Herbert last year, like he had a bunch of 300-yard games. Burrow was throwing the ball 40 times a game before he got hurt. And I'm not opposed to Dak. I like Dak well enough. I mean, he was the guy I actually had a lot of stock in him right before his injury. So that was particularly painful. But I'm looking ahead, and I'm struggling because I see wide receiver is so deep, right? So we don't need to force Jamar Chase. We don't need to force Terry McLaurin here because we could easily come back around and get a couple wide receivers with our next 2-pick turn at 4 and 5. But we're going to take a player here, and we're not going to pick for basically 2 rounds. We're going to have 22 picks between us and the next one, right? So the question becomes in terms of value. Would you rather have the number 1 quarterback, assuming maybe a couple of these guys pop off the board in the next 22 picks, because running backs have already gone heavy, right? So a lot of these guys are kind of second, third tier guys right now. You'll probably see a few of those pop off. A couple of these wideouts will come off the board, probably Chase and McLaurin and, maybe Godwin. Tight ends, we're looking at Waller. I'm fine because he's 27, 28 years old. He's already an older tight end. People don't realize just how old he is because he broke out really late. Like, I'm okay passing on him. I love him in redraft. I love him in, keeper formats. I don't so much love him in dynasty, unless, I've had him for a while and I'm sitting on him, but I don't know if I'm taking him here, especially when Kyle Pitts, Hawkinson, Andrews, Fant, these are all younger players that I can build on their upside. So would you rather at that point say, wait on quarterback and load up on one of these other positions? And what's the key position? What's the build look like for you?
We can try this out here. I'm okay taking Patrick Mahomes here. We can give it a try and see if the quarterbacks that are left on the board justify, wow, we should have waited because this is who we missed out on. Sure. Because I'm okay taking Mahomes and I'm okay taking Najee Harris here on this turn because I think having 2 solid running backs this early that at least we know have 3 years of good production, we'll be fine. And we'll see here as players start going off the board.
There's Waller, Mixon,
Waller goes.
Duke, Evans, Cooper, Pitts is gone, Chase is gone, Sanders, Lamar Jackson's gone. That would have been the other guy I probably would have been interested in just because, well, you at least get that rushing floor, even if it is for the short term. So the quarterbacks that are left, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Dak Prescott, kind of the guys we've already talked about. Running back wise, well, we're already good at 2 running backs, but, we're looking around. We could probably come back around potentially and land a guy like a Trey Sermon or, Chase Edmonds. Wide receivers, like who's left right now? Michael Thomas, well, he's injured. I don't trust it. I'm trying to go a little younger, right? I'm looking 3 years out. I want to make sure I'm grabbing players that are going to help me in 3 years. Kind of like Jerry Jeudy. That's a guy where the Broncos quarterback situation can't really get much worse, can it? So if he progresses, it can only get better, right? So if somebody can get that guy the ball, like he's special with it in his hands. And then here we are at tight end. So we talk about, hey, what's a position that's slower to develop and the players last forever, quarterback and tight end. There's Hawkinson, right? And he's in line for a ton of looks this year. So you've got a guy like Hawkinson, you got a guy like Jeudy. I'm fine waiting around for Irv Smith too on tight end. Like I almost feel like this should be wide receiver right here. Yeah,
and that's the part I'm leaning because you still need to put points in your lineup, right? Like you still want to have these wide receivers to help win you weeks. If Pitts would have made it, I would 100% be advocating for him here because Absolutely. I like Hawkinson. I think he's going to develop into a solid player, but I think a lot like other people do, Pitts is going to be generational. Maybe not this year, maybe not even next year. Like he may just continue to develop, but I think we're going to be talking about him as a top 3 tight end here in a couple of years because the talent is too good. And it really won't matter who's playing quarterback. I mean, right. Derek Carr is putting Darren Waller on the map every single year. So as long as they transition well from Matt Ryan, which I expect them to still be there here this year, next year, I think he should be fine. But he's off the board. Yeah, Jerry Jeudy's a phenomenal player as a Broncos fan. I like him a lot. I'm kind of with you on Michael Thomas. The injury kind of scares me a little bit. He is a little older. So, this may be there is a world where this is kind of the decline of his career, right? No more Drew Brees, quarterback controversy, having to transition, all that. So I'm okay staying away from him. Trying to zoom in on these guys a little bit, see who we got here.
I'm actually feeling Jerry Jeudy, and I'm going against the ECR, and I almost feel like Jalen Waddle because we're not going to get him when we come back around. He'll probably be gone.
Yeah. Juju's an interesting player only because of age, but I'm a big fan of Jalen Waddle. I think he's really going to break out this year. Looks like we have Devonta Smith. You're going to see guys in these dynasty drafts if you haven't done too many of them. Like Devonta Smith is going to be very high up on people's board. Jerry Jeudy, these younger players that just project well because people want to have the age. They want to have the breakout.
Right.
Yeah, like a guy like Tyler Lockett is behind all these guys, and redraft Tyler Lockett would be going ahead of all these players almost.
Right.
All. And so that's kind of the difference you're seeing here. I am 100% on Jerry Jeudy.
All right, let's take Jeudy, and who do we want as the other guy? Because we're back to back here.
Kind of name off the list for me. Looks like we have Cooper Kupp still there.
I'll name them off in order. So we already talked Michael Thomas. They got Deontay, Devonta Smith, Bobby Trees, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, Julio Jones, Juju, Jalen Waddle, DJ Chark, Tyler Lockett, Odell Beckham, Tyler Boyd.
Not a sexy list of wide receivers.
It's not. Well, and that almost makes you wonder, like, well, do I just take Hawkinson? Because we talk about, points in your lineup, right? And I'll probably start really, we always want to make that pile bigger. Points in your lineup is, PIYL,
Pile on.
Yeah, that's right. Pile on. Let's put the points in there. So I'm looking at Hawkinson, but for Dynasty, I mean, I just love Waddle's skill set.
I'm definitely okay with Waddle. The only other player I'm kind of coming back around on Juju, especially in PPR leagues. And I read an article this morning that, the offseason talk about Juju, he's like, I want to play outside a little bit more. And we're like, no, you don't. You really don't. And what I've seen from practice reports is he's in the slot like 100% of the time. Like he has not left out of the slot, but maybe a couple times, which is very, very good. I think Juju is going to be a huge value this year in redraft because he got burnt a lot. But I'm okay taking Jalen Waddle. I think Tua is going to have a fantastic year. I project Tua to be a top 15 quarterback on the season for fantasy. I think he's going to be just very solid. So I'm okay taking Waddle here.
Yeah, and for anybody who's watching this and is like, why would you take Waddle there over Juju, over Julio, over all these guys? Well, Julio's kind of at the end of his career, right? And he's probably not really the alpha in that offense. Juju, the only reason I like Waddle better is because I don't trust Big Ben being around very much longer. And that quarterback situation in Pittsburgh is murky at best. Yeah. Woods and Kupp are both a little bit older. Again, I'm trying to
28, 29.
Yeah, I'm trying to be an ageist, right? Don't want to be an ageist here. But as I'm investing in these players for my dynasty roster, my whole thing is I'm looking at guys that are kind of like 26 and younger, right? I'm trying to get and keep those guys where I have them either approaching or already in their prime so that I can be competitive and competing for championships early and often. And it gives me flexibility with my rookie picks, or if I need to go get a player, I'm not afraid of trading a first or a couple of firsts to go get that player to cap off a championship roster. So that's really where this comes into play. So if we wanted to get cute, we could try and take Juju and hope Waddle comes back to us, but we're talking 22 picks. Do we think that, Michael Thomas, Deontay, Devonta Smith, Robert Woods, Kupp, Julio?
We can go ahead and take Waddle. And as it goes, I'll kind of just mention that we're building – this is a contender already, right? When you have Patrick Mahomes and Christian McCaffrey, and Najee's going to get he's going to get close to like 300 touches or more this year, just the way that the Steelers run this offense. While Jeudy and Waddle may not finish in the, maybe they both don't finish in the top 25 wide receivers this year, their age at least holds value in Dynasty. And so if we get into a situation where, look, we're undefeated, things happen, things get crazy, we're undefeated going into week 10, and we want to trade up and go get a guy like, Keenan Allen, right, who obviously is 29 years old, is a little older, and we have Jeudy or Waddle, and we're willing to sacrifice one of those players to kind of work a package around these two guys, we could do that because the age is going to hold all the value there.
Right.
And there's a good chance that the Keenan Allen owner is going to be out of the playoffs, and he's going to want to get younger. And so that's how you just have to kind of manipulate these dynasty leagues, that you want to have players that still have value. Like you could draft Odell Beckham here. he's not going to have value. Like you basically spend a 6th round pick on him, where you can get a guy like Deebo Samuel, who I'm a big fan of. At least you know he has value going into next year. You can't say that about Odell.
Yeah, I mean, well, Odell, I mean, he's 28, right? I think he still has a couple of years left to play. And given his, injuries, none of them are going to be things that actually slow him down. You're talking about core injuries and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
This is a guy where I expect him to be useful through his age 31, 32 season.
Yeah.
But
the trade value is
none.
None, yeah, because of how people feel about the injuries.
Right. Now you can go with Deebo. My fear with Deebo is that Ayuk becomes the alpha in that offense, and we're drafting the number 2 wide receiver rather in an offense where he would be the 3rd receiving option behind Kittle and Ayuk.
Mm.
And so I feel like the Deebo ceiling might be really limited. Now we do need a 3rd wide receiver, right? We need a starter, but I'm looking down this list and I'm like, we might be able to wait and get a guy like a Michael Gallup, Curtis Samuel. I know is somebody you're really excited about all the time. Robbie Anderson is a guy we can grab a little bit later. Marquise Brown, Darnell Mooney, Henry Ruggs. Like these are all guys that I'm like, I feel like they're all fine as wide receiver 3s. And, I'm looking at tight ends. Hey, you got Fant, you got Goddard. I'm not excited about any of these guys. I mean, maybe I was kind of hoping one of the tight ends would drop. We missed out on Andrews by 3 picks, Hawkinson by 5. So, I mean, a little bit of a tight end and quarterback run right in front of us. But the question becomes now, do we go wide receiver 3 and take a guy like, do we force Odell Beckham here, or do we reach for a guy? Maybe it's Samuel, maybe it's Elijah Moore, maybe it's Michael Gallup. We could even go running back here. We could take Kareem Hunt here and throw him in a flex spot. Kareem Hunt's not fitting that 26-year-old window we were looking at, but he's going to be useful as an RB2.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the question becomes, what direction would you want to go here? Fill the flex, get your 3rd wide out. You're looking at the tight end.
I think there's enough perceived depth at tight end, kind of in the range that we're at, that we can kind of wait another round to kind of get our starter. Because a guy like Irv Smith might make it back around. If not, there's at least plenty of later guys that I know, like Jonnu Smith is a guy I'm still a fan of. When Mac Jones eventually becomes the starter there, more of a pocket passer guy. There's guys like Anthony Ferkser, like tight end players that you can at least put into your lineup to get you points if you've already missed out on this tier. As far as the wide receivers, we can go wide receiver, running back here, or go 2 wide receivers, but we're back to the pile where we need some points in our lineup. And so Michael Gallup is a guy that I like a lot. He's going to be a free agent after this year. If he gets extended by the Cowboys at some point this year or next offseason, Cooper is pretty much as good as gone, because I think he has a void after the 22 or no, actually it'll be after this season, I believe. I'll have to vet that, but it's after this season or next season. He has a void, which it's like a minimal cap hit to the Cowboys. And the other scenario is, hey, people in the league like Michael Gallup. They know he's good. He's just got 2 very good, talented wide receivers in front of him. So yeah, I'd be advocating for Michael Gallup as one of my picks. I'm a big Deebo Samuel fan as well. My thing is Trey Lance. If I knew Jimmy Garoppolo was going to be the starter there for 3 years, I'd be like, let's do it. Like, I think him and Deebo Samuel, for what I've seen from camp reports, Ayuk and Samuel have both been just shredding that defense out there, and we know that San Francisco defense is pretty good. But Trey Lance runs the ball a little bit more than I probably would want from my quarterback to support multiple weapons. So yeah, I would probably go Gallup here on the first one, and then on the second one, I'll hand that off to you. Another upside play would be fine, but you can see as we start getting later in these drafts, there are plenty of viable starting wide receivers because of the age, 28 and older wide receivers like Odell Beckham. They're going to fall and still be useful in your lineup.
Right. And I'm looking at this, and I might actually go wide receiver here, simply to have that 3rd wide out and put in our flex play, because wide receivers just frankly last longer than running backs. And I like Kareem Hunt, but I don't know that after, giving Nick Chubb the bag over there in Cleveland, if Hunt's going to continue to get the same workload. I don't know if he's even going to be in Cleveland another year or two. Like, there's a lot of uncertainty there.
I've kind of been off on Kareem Hunt this year. I can't pull the trigger. I think it's like a 5th round ADP or something in redraft. A
little high.
It's just hard to do.
So here's what we have. I'm looking at this whole wide receiver list. I'll just name them off. So you've got Odell, Deebo, Rashad Bateman, Laviska Shenault, who I also like. He's an interesting player. Adam Thielen, Will Fuller, suspended for week 1, but man, the guy can get fantasy points if he's getting targets and getting catches. Elijah Moore, interesting rookie. Curtis Samuel, Michael Gallup, Michael Pittman Jr., Rondell Moore's been lighting it up in Cardinals camp, and Jalen Reagor. I see 2 guys on this list that we should be considered locked and loaded for north of 100 targets. That's Odell Beckham and Michael Gallup. And so if that's the case, I kind of feel like I want the volume at wide receiver. Yeah, Beckham's a little bit older, kind of violates the 26-year-old rule, but really I was trying to nail that for the first 5 picks, right? That foundation of the team. So I'll tell you what, let's take Gallup here with the 6-12, and then for the 7-1, we'll take Odell Beckham.
Sounds good. Yeah. In another direction I probably would have went is I definitely would have picked Gallup or Curtis Samuel and then go for another young wide receiver with upside, right? Like, I'm not a big fan of Rashad Bateman. I like the player. I don't like the outlook, I think, for fantasy. I think he's going to be very boom or bust. But you could have went like that. Like, hey, I know I can start Curtis Samuel every week and he'll at least give me some points. And I have this young upside player in Bateman or whoever you wanted to look at. Elijah Moore is another guy that's been getting a lot of camp hype. And so Elijah Moore is still here on our way back, and he is. That is a player I'm interested in. But let's look at the tight ends because we eventually need to.
Irv Smith, that's the guy we were talking about. He's sitting right there staring at us.
Yeah, I would that's probably the tier where it's getting real close, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to wait too long. I'd probably just take Irv Smith in this part.
So I've got a wild idea, though. I've got a really wild idea. I don't want to miss on the tight end any further because it starts getting a little dicey. Like, I like Jonnu. Yeah. That's fine. Hunter Henry's going to be a goal line guy. Some folks are really hot on Troutman, but there's probably not enough volume there. A lot of question marks up and down this group. I think Irv Smith is the one who stands to actually get the most work, especially with the injury to B.C. Johnson. It's being reported that Olabisi Johnson, the number 3 wideout for the Vikings, just tore his ACL. And so that's going to open up some more looks in that offense. I'd expect to see Irv disconnected from the line, maybe in a big slot. He'll also be lined up on the line in their, 12 formation where you get Dalvin Cook as a single back, run 2 tight ends with Irv and Conklin. Like, I just feel like there's a lot of upside there. And just to get a little wild here, what if we grabbed our QB too? Because there's been a massive run on QBs again in the 8th round. And we're starting to get a little thinned out here. How about Trey Lance? You've got Mahomes. Now you just stick Lance behind him. And if he pops, you either have an elite asset to trade or, whether that's Mahomes or Lance, right? Or you've got your bye week filler and you're relieving one quarterback who's elite with another one who potentially could be.
Yeah, and I think you just need to identify your draft and see how things are going. There's a lot of wide receivers here I still like. I think it's more of what do you project the value to be in 3 years? And for Trey Lance, he could be the next Lamar Jackson, right? And he's in a much better offense with astounding weapons.
Right.
I'm okay taking him in this situation. I think we know we're taking Irv Smith here. Okay. If it was me, I would probably take Irv Smith and then go Elijah Moore. And then I'd be fine taking a guy like Tua on my way back, who I think is going to have a solid career. But to take Trey Lance and potentially have 2 top 5 fantasy quarterbacks, I mean, even in a 1-quarterback league, players are going to be wanting those guys, right? I mean, you're going to have some type of trade value there. So if you eventually want to trade Lance, and I don't ever recommend drafting to trade players. Right. I mean, that's a terrible way to look at it. But you don't need 2 top 5 quarterbacks for a reason. And I think we can agree Patrick Mahomes can at least be a top 5 quarterback for the next at least 10 years because of the amount of yards he puts up. But yeah, I'm okay taking Trey Lance, kind of see how the rest of the position falls because I think he projects well.
Well, and I actually kind of like Tua also. I mean, another option here could be we could go running back. And Damian Harris is catching a lot of love in New England right now. And this is a guy that's going to see probably 225 touches, which is abnormal for a Patriots running back. Could be a steal right here for us in the 9th round. And running back's pretty thin. Do we want to maybe punt the quarterback for another round and grab our QB2 later and maybe load up at our backup running backs?
Yeah, I'm totally okay with that. Damian Harris, or I even like A.J. Dillon. I would like him more if I knew Aaron Rodgers was going to be there long term. But I would definitely go Damian Harris. What do you think of Cam Akers? At what point are you even considering drafting him? No, you're not?
I mean, it's got to be pretty late. I mean, to say he doesn't have any value and he's off the board completely would be a lie. But an Achilles injury for a running back is pretty devastating. because not only does that impact your speed and explosion, but your ability to cut. And, I don't know, man. I'm not an injury expert. Like I'll defer to the doctors and the physical therapists and all that on that kind of thing. But I can't think of a single running back who's ever come back from an Achilles injury and been as good or better than they were.
Yeah.
And we hadn't even seen what Cam Akers can be yet, so we don't even really know what his ceiling was to know what he's getting back to.
Yeah.
I just feel like at this point it's a hard pass. If he comes back around, if he's sitting there around 12, 13, 14, and I'm kicking around a bunch of mid-level, players I don't really care about, then maybe I go ahead and make a play and I grab him, but I'm probably not doing it here. I think I'm cool taking Damian Harris and punting the quarterback spot, another round.
Sounds good.
Let's do it. So we'll plug in Damian Harris. And we did get the reach alert from Fantasy Pros on Irv Smith. Said there was a 100% chance he'd be around in 2 more rounds. Here's the thing. Number 1 tight end left on the board. He may have been, but there's some teams that are thin at wide receiver that might have loaded up at tight end also. Don't pass on your guys. I don't care what the draft wizard says. I don't care what its grade says. You go and you take your guys, you fill in your roster and put points in your lineup.
Yeah, and there's a 100% chance he was going to be there because the computer wasn't going to draft him.
Right, exactly. So. The computer is not the humans you're drafting against in your draft room. So let's see. Quarterback, Trey Lance is still sitting there.
Yeah. Trey Lance is there. Elijah Moore is still there.
Do we want to do Elijah Moore and Trey Lance, or do we want to do Elijah Moore and Rondell Moore?
Let's see. Let's look at the wide receivers and see who we still got there.
Because I'm fine in a couple rounds here looking at a guy like, I don't know, Brian Edwards. I still believe in the skill set there. I kind of like Paris Campbell a little bit.
I'm a fan of Terrace Marshall.
Terrace Marshall. Yep, that's another guy that's really interesting to grab. Nico Collins. Nico Collins is the guy worth bringing.
And this is a situation where you're looking at, it's like, man, maybe I should have went more stability earlier in the draft, right? Like when we were taking Jalen Waddle and Jerry Jeudy, it's like, man, look at all these upside wide receivers. Like I would almost put some of these guys on the same career path as like Jerry Jeudy, right? Because like I love the talent, but I could definitely see where Cortland Sutton comes back and they re-sign him, and he's kind of coming off slow in camp. But there is a world where it's a 1A, 1B there, and one of these guys could take over. And so, but I like who we got here. Yeah, I mean, you basically
to just kind of to back, not back up what you were saying, but to kind of come back around to it. You're talking about Waddle and Jeudy were 1st-round draft capital guys and considered elite prospects. And I mean, they dominated college football. These other guys are nice prospects. We like them. We like them at the value they are. But to place them in our lineup over those other 2 guys, I think would be foolish. I don't know if I would go that route. Because
I mean to say that, like, what do you view the difference trajectory, like Jerry Jeudy and Elijah Moore, the difference in what 5-6 rounds that you could have got? At least you have a projection for Elijah Moore to be 85% of Jerry Jeudy, but you could have got a more stability this year at the wide receiver position. When we were,
do you think Moore is more stable than Jeudy? I guess I'm having trouble following you on that one.
No, I just think Moore can be 80% of what Jerry Jeudy projects to be at the current moment. Things change. They may get Aaron Rodgers next year, and then everything's different. But I assume they'll be looking for a quarterback next year. They'll be getting a rookie. We'll be waiting on Jerry Jeudy probably another year. Or if Cortland Sutton eventually comes around and continues to dominate, you're still looking at a 1A, 1B situation in Denver.
I have a sneaking suspicion Drew Lock's not the quarterback, and it'll end up being Teddy Bridgewater. It's Lock's job to lose, and he'll lose it because he's frankly not very good. And then Bridgewater's going to come in there, and he's going to kind of just hold the ship steady. And I think we're going to see Jerry Jeudy being targeted over the middle and used on those intermediate routes the way Robbie Anderson was in Carolina last year. And Cortland Sutton's going to be down there frustrating fantasy owners in that DJ Moore sort of a role where he's taking guys deep. He's might be open, can win those jump balls. He can do all the things you want him to do for fantasy. Plenty talented. I'm not knocking the guy. I just don't think Bridgewater would find him on those routes. I don't know. Elijah Moore might not even really play this year. Like, we love the highlight plays and all that stuff, but they did bring back Jamison Crowder in the slot. And Moore's a smaller guy to be on the outside. And they didn't go ahead and give Corey Davis and is it Keelan Cole was the other receiver they brought in?
Sure.
They brought in a couple guys. yeah, they paid two guys to come in, two professional receivers to come in. I don't think they're going to jump Elijah Moore over those guys unless he's truly being special in practice.
Mm-hmm.
And while he's good, I like him a lot. Great dynasty asset. I don't think that he provides you 85% of Jerry Jeudy this year, maybe not even next year, because Judy's ascension, I think, is going to be much faster than that of Elijah Moore. And I have no trouble saying that. Now, Rondale Moore might be a more interesting case because Rondale might be getting touches as a back. He might be getting touches as a receiver. He could be getting touches all over the field, special teams, if you get points for return yards. That's a guy where he's a different type of athlete. And if he's healthy and on the field and getting touches, he could be explosive. Now, both those guys are lottery tickets at this point in the 10th round here, which we've made it a little deeper than we thought we would. I don't know. If I'm looking at who are the guys I can plug in right now and feel comfortable, like I like Elijah Moore, right? I like Rondale Moore. I don't know if I like them more than Waddle and Jeudy. I don't even know if I like them as 85% of those guys. They're nice bench players. They're nice players to have for upside. But that's where I think we might differ on kind of some of those valuations because, I think they need a bit more seasoning before I'm comfortable dropping them into my dynasty lineup.
Yeah, that's fine. And maybe I shouldn't have mentioned Elijah Moore because I was maybe leaning more towards Terrace Marshall, who I think I said earlier in a tweet this morning that I projected he'll probably have somewhere around – he could have anywhere from like 800-ish yards and 6 touchdowns, and that would be a solid season for him, and I can definitely see that. But, yeah, we can look at quarterback. We still take our backup here, and you said Trey Lance was still here, correct?
Yeah, and let's do 10, 11, let's do through the 13th round here. We've got a few more minutes left before we got to wrap the show anyway. So I'll tell you what, let's do, we'll take Trey Lance, so we'll get our other quarterback. That'll give us an alert that we reached probably. Oh, there we go. They had him ranked at 98th. We took him at 120. Apparently that was a great pick. Isn't that something? I feel like I'm playing Madden right now. And then, so now the question becomes Elijah Moore, Rondale Moore, Terrace Marshall. And I like Marshall, but it seems like everything I'm hearing out of camp, DJ Moore is lighting the world on fire, and he's far and away the best receiver. Do we want the number 3 option for Sam Darnold's offense?
Well, and so that's what we project, right? Is like, well, are we even going to use any of these guys really this year?
Right.
And so for next year, where Robbie Anderson has one more year on his contract, he may get an extension. But I'm kind of coming around to the idea, as long as Joe Brady doesn't get a head coaching job next year, which he's lighting the world on fire too. This offense was kind of phenomenal for fantasy with Teddy Bridgewater.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Sam Darnold can at least provide a little bit more of a ceiling. I think we've seen flashes here and there, and we know Adam Gase has just he's been able to drag talented fantasy players down for multiple years now. And so, because as they leave and go to other situations, and I think Ryan Tannehill is the best situation that we can talk about, where all he needed to was escape the clutches. And look, now he's a phenomenal player. I think we can, Robbie Anderson, right? Like we can talk about Robbie Anderson last year. Like he left New York and actually had a pretty solid season. And so I think if it was me personally, I would take Terrace Marshall just on the projection of next year.
Okay.
But like I said, Elijah Moore, I think, is probably going to outperform him a little bit this year. Same with Rondale Moore. I think they'll have more boom games than Marshall provides.
So I think if I look at just pure ceiling, I like Elijah Moore. I think he's a guy that just projects to have the best, kind of most predictable ceiling and the highest floor probably out of the 3. I would rather have a guy who, though he's probably not on the field this year, he's potentially a wide receiver 1-2 for the Jets next year. And if Zach Wilson comes around, that could be really exciting, right? He could be that guy. And maybe he gives the offense what Brandon Ayuk, is giving the 49ers this year. And that would give us some really interesting wide receivers over, maybe not in 2021, but 22 and 23. So let's pop Elijah Moore in there. And then what we'll do is we'll come back around. We'll see if Terrace Marshall, because he's a little down the list yet. If he's available on the 12th, we'll just take him. That'll be an auto draft spot. Sound legit?
Oh, yeah, sounds good. I thought I was waiting for you to select. I was ready to watch the players go off.
I was waiting for you to be like, no, damn it, I want Terrace Marshall.
There went Cam Akers, finally.
Yep, Cam Akers off the board. There's some tight ends again. We got some more of these really bad running backs. Oh, there's Jamal Williams, Lat Murray. Oh, there's Terrace. He went off 12-10. We missed him by 2 points or by 2 picks. We were almost there.
It's been kind of weird to see Evan Ingram going as late as he is.
I just don't think anybody trusts him.
Yeah.
And I don't blame them. I really don't.
Yeah.
Staring at Rondell Moore here. So this is going to be the last two picks we're going to do just due to time constraints for the show. But I mean, we'll kind of review our team after we make these two picks and see where we're at so far. So I kind of like Rondell Moore. Again, it's kind of upside play. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm okay with that upside play. And so we have our three running backs currently in McCaffrey, Harris, and Harris. And so I see the ECR has Kenneth Gainwell as the top running back. I hope that's not true.
Yeah, that's what they're saying. They have him as the 44th player, and I don't know if I buy that because that Eagles backfield after Miles Sanders is a dumpster fire.
Yeah.
I would actually consider Jonnu Smith as a tight end too.
Yeah.
Before I would consider Kenneth Gainwell. Patriots offense is looking a lot like the old Hernandez Gronk years where Brady was slinging at the tight ends. You know, Jonnu's probably going to be the between the 20s guy. You'll catch Hunter Henry in the red zone because he's so skilled in that space. And these guys are going to get a lot of work. Those Patriots receivers are not great. And I think we're going to get back to, you know, having a strong running game, which will be Harris. And then the tight ends will be really active, really similar to what we saw back, you know, we're talking 10, 12 years ago with the Patriots where you had the two tight ends. And then they had guys like Kevin Falk and Corey Dillon and all those dudes, you know, getting out there and making plays. So I'm down with going ahead and let's take Rondell Moore. This is purely an upside play. We know he's a gadget player, but man, he looks really good in practice right now. So let's just grab him. And then, do you think Jonnu? Do you want to force a running back? Like, what do you? Do you have anybody you're in love with?
I want to kind of look at the running back position a little bit and kind of go through some of the names just to kind of.
I'm going to read them all. Don't get sick, okay? I want you to get your brown bag ready. You got Kenneth Gainwell, Ramondre Stevenson, Marlon Mack, Keyshawn Vaughn, Sony Michel, James White, Salvin Ahmed, Darrington Evans, Joshua Kelly, Jeff Wilson Jr., Kerryon Johnson, LaMichael Pirine.
Yuck. The only players that I'd be considering here, and you're really swinging for the fences at this point, is LaMichael Pirine. You hope that maybe he gets some opportunity in this new Jets offense that kind of you're hoping mimics the Kyle Shanahan offense in San Francisco that we know is good for running backs. Darrington Evans, who's become a Twitter favorite, that Derrick Henry eventually has to fall off, right? And that Evans may stick around for a little bit or start to get some of the workload. Derrick Henry, the thing is like he just can't stay healthy forever with this workload. Like I just assume at some point he has to get hurt, and I'm not projecting that at all. But the guy's getting like an absurd amount of touches, and they're all running up the middle, and so.
Or any of the guys we have to take here. Because I'm almost like, if we're looking at, say, Darrington Evans, or if we're looking at LaMichael Pirine, why not just wait a few more rounds?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I definitely would be waiting. I was just kind of going over some of the guys that, like, if you wait too long for your RB2 or RB3, this is kind of the range you're looking at. Even a guy like Marlon Mack is a little interesting to me. He's getting some good news out of camp that he's looking pretty good and his cuts are looking sharp, and you hope that's good news for Cam Akers' projected future. Mack is back on a 1-year deal. He may earn himself another 2-year contract with another team next year. I could definitely see Mack on the Eagles because they need someone to replace Jordan Howard next year because Jordan Howard is not it. And that's kind of a team I could see that look at Marlon Mack like they don't need him to be the overall running back one that they saw before. They just need someone that can help produce some touchdowns. But yeah, in this situation, I would just wait and just take my shot on somebody a few rounds later.
Well, then let's go ahead and grab a guy we know is going to get some love in Jonnu Smith. I don't trust Robert Tonyan's touchdown upside. So let's go ahead and we'll take Jonnu, and then we'll let it pick, and we'll just review the team in terms of what we have so far. Let it do its thing. Do. 13, 12, 10. I know I can skip this, but I kind of like watching the names click by because, well, I'm a weirdo.
Justin Fields.
Yep, finally. That's a guy that I like quite a bit. I just love his rushing upside. I think he can be special. Let's go ahead and pull up our rosters here. So here's what we have. So we picked from the 101, right? We walked away with Patrick Mahomes, arguably a top 3 quarterback. We walked away with Christian McCaffrey, easily top 3 running back. Najee Harris, a guy that more and more I'm starting to see him as almost like a low-end RB1, high-end RB2.
Mm-hmm.
Jerry Jeudy and Jalen Waddle, 2 guys that project wide receiver 1 upside. Michael Gallup, 100 target guy there in Dallas, and if he doesn't stay in Dallas after this year, he's getting the bag and going somewhere else to get some targets. Irv Smith, kind of a shot in the dark. We're kind of playing the target game here and hoping like heck that Kirk Cousins has to throw it to somebody not named Justin Jefferson or Adam Thielen, so maybe it's going to be Irv Smith. Odell Beckham, looking for that bounce back. We'd love to see some of what we saw when he was with the Giants. I'm not counting on that, but 85% of that makes him a nice flex. And then a really interesting bench, Damian Harris, guy that we expect to get about 225, 230 touches. Trey Lance, a guy that could be an elite level quarterback with great rushing upside. Elijah Moore, Rondell Moore, these 2 guys, spectacular skills, can do a lot with the ball in their hands. Jonnu Smith could easily step in instead of Irv, so we kind of got a tight end by committee on the roster. I feel pretty good about this group from the 101. Now, I hate picking from the 101, frankly. But how do you feel about this group? If you could have done something differently, what would you have done?
I wish I would have found some more consistency at the wide receiver position, because it looks like our team is ready to win right now. And so while you want the value of age and upside, you still want to win.
Sure.
I don't know where we would have pivoted instead, because I like the running backs that we have. I think I would have waited on Trey Lance, seeing that Justin Fields went in the 14th round. Just some more depth, and you're going to need depth, especially as waiver wires are going to be absolutely bare, especially right after a startup. There are going to be some players that show up eventually, like a Darren Waller or a Russell Gage, that you can get off of waivers over the last few years. But for the most part, you're just going to really want that depth. And even Tua went like a whole round or 2 later. And so I probably would have waited on the second quarterback. But other than that, I like how we project over the next few years. I think it's a contending team. Having McCaffrey and Harris and Mahomes does that. And we have the age, so we have value. And that's really one of the biggest things in Dynasty. You have to treat it like an investment. You want to have something of value, because a guy like Derrick Henry, who is a fantastic running back, where did he go in this draft? He went at the 1.
Derrick Henry, 10.
I had him in a league that is kind of turning into a rebuild, and I couldn't trade him for anything because people understand the workload and the age. And so that's why age is such a contributing factor when you're doing your startup.
So here's our running backs with McCaffrey and Harris. I'm going to read off the rest of the league here, and I'll let you determine if anybody's got a better pair of running backs. Saquon and JK.
No.
We're better. All right. Jonathan Taylor, Aaron Jones.
I guess maybe for this year, Aaron Jones, but
okay. How about Dalvin Cook, Austin Eckler?
That's actually an interesting pair. The only reason I'm not taking Dalvin Cook in any dynasty startups this year. I just don't trust him, I guess, long term. But I still like ours better than theirs.
Okay. How about Alvin Kamara, Kareem Hunt?
Well, that's waiting a little too long on. Well, and that's what kind of happens, right? When you take an elite tight end like George Kittle in the second round, like this team did, you have to sacrifice somewhere, and they decided to sacrifice the running back 2 position.
So, how about Edwards-Helaire, Darrell Henderson?
Don't like that.
Okay, Gibson Carter.
It's fine. You're project. That's a lot of projecting.
McCaffrey, but it's not. Yeah. So, and then you've got Chubb Elliott. Probably like our guys better.
Yeah, like for the future years, for sure.
Yeah. And PPR. Remember, this is PPR also. We got to factor in, like, do these guys get their work done in the passing game? And we think Najee Harris will. Joe Mixon, David Montgomery.
I'm just not a fan of David Montgomery, personally. And so I would take ours as well.
Don't you besmirch my Iowa State brethren, okay? How about Derrick Henry, Chris Carson?
That is way too much age for me, personally.
Okay. How about DeAndre Swift, Travis Etienne?
I still like ours, but that's another thing where you're trying to project. And so if both of those players hit, I wouldn't be surprised if both running backs were like considered top 12 2 years from now.
Okay. How about Javonte Williams and Trey Sermon?
So I actually like this guy's team the way that it's going, like this 12 spot, because he said, hey, I'm going to kind of punt the running back position. I'm going to take a lot of them late, and I'm going to take upside. So you look at who he did in the first few rounds where he got Justin Jefferson and DK Metcalf on the turn. And I've done draft styles just like this.
Right. I love just getting
you in the third. Higgins. I mean, those top 4 wide receivers. If we go into next year and all of these guys, like let's say Jamar Chase is great, but let's say T. Higgins is fantastic, and he just in some world he just dominates that offense and is the true wide receiver 1, or at least 1A, 1B. All these guys could be top 15, top 20 wide receivers going into next year. I think Jefferson's already top 10. DK Metcalf's in that range of top 10. It depends on who you talk to. Brandon Ayuk, I like Debo, but Brandon Ayuk could definitely take that step forward and be top 15. Higgins could sneak into that top 20. Like that is a lot of value, and they're all under the age of 25, so that's fantastic. Javonte is a guy I like a lot. Projects well in the next year. Trey Sermon, I'm a little iffy about, but you're taking that risk, right? Like that's the risk you have to take. And at least you have Myles Gaskins to start this year as your RB1 if you need to.
Right. I like that team also. The thing that I will say is that I usually like to pick from the 107. I like to be in the middle of the round. I hate being at the beginning or the end. So if you look at what this guy could have done, and I don't love the way this team played out, to be honest with you. Like the 107 really missed a lot of opportunities. Yeah. You took Devontae Adams. Love that. I'm good with that. You come back around the 206 and you took Antonio Gibson over Calvin Ridley. If you're already kind of punting running back to a point, I'm just going to take Ridley there. Because I'd rather have the receivers personally. And then you could have come back around in the third. Keenan Allen, now I'm going to take Brandon Ayuk there. You could have had Adams, Ridley, Ayuk to get started. Still landed Kyle Pitts. Still landed Josh Allen. Instead of Brandon Cooks, you probably could have gone running back there.
Yeah. Like he got Michael Carter in the next round. Like he could have taken Michael Carter there with Brandon Cooks. Right. Javonte Williams with that same round. And
so I would have taken Kareem Hunt over Brandon Cooks right there.
Yeah, and especially if you're going to go basically zero running back in that position. Yeah,
and that's, again, I don't tell people to go zero running back or zero wide receiver or whatever. You have to play your draft board. Let the draft come to you. I'm all about fluidity, and you should be too. Fluidity is what keeps you putting points in your lineup. That's all that really matters. Put points in your lineup. I don't care how you get them, just get them. And don't pass on, say, an elite wide receiver, an elite tight end, an elite quarterback, whatever that looks like, for a fourth-tier running back. Drafters got into this issue last year, and I use this one all the time. People were taking Kenyon Drake at like the 10th, 11th, 12th pick last year overall. And that really flamed a lot of people. And they very easily could have taken Travis Kelce instead, or taken Darren Waller instead, or taken Patrick Mahomes, or any of those other guys, and been way further ahead. It's just another example of, running back panic. I got to get a running back. Look, you have to get good production at running back. Sometimes those guys are taken later because they don't start week 1, but guys in front of them get hurt. You get guys in timeshares. You just got to put the points in your lineup. If you have an advantage at quarterback, tight end, wide receiver, so on, it's okay if you're at a disadvantage at running back because you're going to make up the difference elsewhere. But with that, we're way over time today. Always a pleasure. Really excited about the way this team build went out. We're probably going to do another. You want to do another one of these next week?
Yeah, I always enjoy it. We can do it from a different spot. We can pick that middle spot this time and see if we can even do a little zero running back and see how we like our team and the way it functions out.
You shut your mouth. We don't have to do zero running back. We're going to do fluidity, damn it. So, yeah, let's plan on let's do another mock draft next weekend. Maybe we'll hit on the 6 or 7 spot, and then the week after, maybe we'll do like the 11, 12 spot. And we'll just kind of keep bouncing around the first round so you can see a bunch of different builds over the course of August here, and we'll go from there. But with that, for Kyle Carroll, I am Jeff DiMatteo. Thank you once again for checking out the Gridiron Ratings Dynasty Podcast. If you liked what we had to say, subscribe, leave some comments. Tell us that we're stupid. Tell us that you loved it. Give us some feedback. We love that kind of thing. And if you haven't already checked it out, go to gridironratings.com. Check out the draft guide and some of the different premium content we have going on this year. We are here to help you win championships, plural, not just one. Go get them all. Until next weekend, I'm Jeff. He's Kyle. Take care.
Thanks, guys.